Hi, this is Wendy. I have a really neat project for you today. These are called trigger mittens. They're a Newfoundland tradition. They go back generations, and they're a uniquely Canadian winter project. They're called trigger mittens because they combine the flexibility of a glove, or the ease of movement of a glove, along with keeping your fingers toasty like a mitten. Originally, they were used by Newfoundland men who would shoot seabirds and they needed their finger free to use their rifle. These are great for any kind of winter activity because they allow you to hold a shovel or drive your car or hold a dog leash, anything that requires more dexterity but still keeping your fingers nice and warm. I hope you'll give this unique mitten a try. For the trigger mittens, I am going to be using this lovely fingering weight yarn from Arcane Fiberworks. It's an 80/20 merino nylon sock yarn, and the color is Where the Wind Blows. You will need a size 3 to 3.5 millimeter hook for this pattern, depending on your gauge. I'll be using a 3.5 millimeter hook. It's very important to check your gauge to get a good result with a close fitting pattern like this. Some of my beginner tutorials can be easily made by just watching the video, but for this one, I would recommend downloading the pattern from my Etsy store, as I will be demonstrating the right hand mitten in a medium size. So let's get started with the ribbing. For the ribbing, I'm going to start with a chain of 16. And then single crochet in the second loop from the hook and across for a total of 15 single crochets. And I'll be back when that's done. So there's my starting row of 15 single crochets. Of course, you could make this row longer if you wanted a wider cuff or one that folded up. But this makes a long enough cuff to tuck into the sleeve of a coat or jacket. At the end of that row, I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and single crochet in the back loop of each single crochet across. And by going in the back loop, you get the back and forth motion and elasticity of the ribbing. So 1 single crochet in the back loop across. The last one's a little bit hard to get at. It's often a bit smaller. So just make sure you catch that 15th one and double check your count to make sure that your cuff size stays consistent. Then I'm going to continue that same row, single crocheting in every one across, and at the end of each row you'll do a turning chain of 1 and then turn for the next row. One little tip. I find that it looks tidier if I really snug up that turning chain before I turn and do the next row. There are different ways of cleaning up that edge. Some people like to pick up at that extra little bump on the end, which looks very good, and it closes in that little space that we see on every other row. There's a bit of a gap there, but I find that doing that makes it a little less elastic, and in this application it's really important that it's a stretchy ribbing. So like I said, I just really snug up that 1 turning chain before I turn, and that gives me a ribbing that is nice and elastic but also tidy, and it doesn't flare out at the side. So give that a try if you find that your ribbing ends up being a little bit bumpy and overly large along the edge. I'll show you again. So that last stitch, a little tricky to find, it hides in there. The turning chain, snug that up nice and tight, and then turn to make your next row. You'll have to experiment, but I find that works for me. So I'm going to continue making 15 single crochets in the back loop until I have a total of 42 rows for the small size, 46 for the medium, and 50 for the large. But in this case I'm making the medium size, so I need 46 rows. Alright, so here's my ribbing all done for the mitten. I have 46 rows, and because each of these little ridges is comprised of 2 rows, I can simply count up the ridges, and I have 23 ridges to make 46 rows. To join this together, I'm going to hold these 2 right sides together. I want the ridges at the end, not the valleys. So that's the inside, that's the outside. And I'm going to hold the 2 edges of the outside together and put them together with a row of slip stitches. So I'm going to go under both sides of the single crochet, not just the back one this time, but both sides, and then into the first starting chain, pull it back through, and go through my loop for a slip stitch. Then into the second one, and the second one on the back. Pull it through, slip stitch. And I'm going to do that 15 times all the way across. Okay, so there's my slip stitches all the way across, joining the cuff together, nice and neatly like that. So now I'm going to turn it the right side out. So turning that seam that we just made to the inside, I'm going to do 1 chain stitch and turn so that the outside is facing, and you can see that your seam there almost disappears in between the rows of ribbing. Now we're going to make a foundation row across the top of the ribbing, or the edge of the rows. And I'm going to do that by putting 1 stitch in the end of each row for a total of 46. The number of single crochets is going to equal the number of rows in my ribbing. So just find a good spot for each one so that you can do it consistently around. I'm going to go in here for my first one. And single crochet. I'm going to work around this tail so that I don't have to work it in later. So just pick a consistent spot at the end of each row to do your foundation around, your foundation row, which is a single crochet in the end of each row. So I'll end up with 46 single crochets when I'm finished with this round. And from here on out, I'll be working in the round continuously, not going back and forth. So I've got my 46 stitches around in the end of the rows. I'm just going to try on the cuff to make sure that it's comfortable. And I'm just going to back up a minute to show you how you measure for the size of your trigger mitten. So when I measure around my hand, flat like this, just above where the thumb joins the palm, that's the measurement you're going to use for figuring out whether you need a small, medium, or large. And because mine's 8 inches, I know I need a medium. You could adjust a little bit to make it a little bit bigger or smaller by switching up your hook size a little bit bigger and smaller and being intentional about your gauge. The length of the hand is not as crucial. You can customize that as you go along. I'm going to take a stitch marker and mark the first stitch of this foundation row after I complete the next one. And I'll show you why in a moment. And I'm also going to mark the first stitch of the first row. Now I didn't do any kind of a chain or anything to step up. I'm just continuing around in a continuous round. So I've marked the first stitch of that foundation row and the first stitch of round 1. And I'm going to continue around with a single crochet in each single crochet around for round 1, and I'll come back at the beginning of round 2. Round 2 is where I'm going to start making the thumb gusset. So widening out the mitten to make room for the thumb. And from this point forward, I'm going to move this purple stitch marker up with each round. It's very important that you track your first stitch in each round. If you lose your place or your stitch marker breaks or falls out, that's why we've got this backup stitch marker in the first stitch of the foundation row. You could go back and follow your stitches up to find where your starting stitch is. So that's just in case you drop or lose your stitch marker as you go along. The reason it's important to keep track of your first stitch is that the beginning of the round will travel around the mitten with the natural lean of crochet stitches. I just realized I didn't have my second light on, so hopefully the previous video wasn't too dark and this will be a little bit better. If you're following along on the pattern, round 2 calls for 25 single crochets and then an increase, and that looks like this. So I'm going to do the first one, move up my stitch marker, always keeping it in the first stitch of the round. You'll notice that I'm going under both of the sides of the single crochet, under both sides of the V at the top of the stitch. You could go through one if you prefer. It will affect your gauge a little bit. I like going through 2. It makes a little bit more of a dense fabric. Okay, so I didn't count because I was talking, so I need to go back. Starting with this first one, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. 24 and 25. All right, so now I get to the part where I'm starting my increase for the thumb. I'm going to do 2 single crochets in the next stitch. 1 and 2 in the same stitch, single crochet 1 in the next stitch, and 2 single crochets in the next. So 2, 1, 2. So my 3 stitches have turned into 5 stitches. And then I'll single crochet the rest of the way around and come back at the beginning of round 3. So for round 3, just like in the last round, I did 25 single crochets to bring me up to the point where the increases are. So 25 single crochets, 2 in the next single crochet, and then 1, 2, 3 single crochets, and then 2 in the next one for the next increase. So I have 2 single crochets in one stitch, and then 1, 2, 3 in the middle, and 2 in the last stitch. So for rounds 4, 5, and 6, it will be in the similar line where we do 25 single crochets, an increase, and then each time going up by 2 in the thumb gusset. So the first time I did 1, now it's 3, and then it'll be 5, 7, and 9, and for the large size 11 in between. So I want to keep increasing in this manner until I have 9 stitches in between my increases for a total of 56 stitches. I've worked my mitten to the end of row 6. If you're doing a large, you'll need to add row 7. You can see here where it has opened out for the base of the thumb, and I have a total of 56 stitches right now for a medium. A large would be 60 and a small would be 52. I'm going to continue even, just doing single crochet rounds on those 56 stitches until the work measures 2.5 inches to get me to the base of the thumb. And when I'm measuring that, I'm measuring from the foundation row. So from this row where I single crocheted onto the edge of the ribbing, that's my foundation row, and I'm going to measure from that point. You can see already how much the starting single crochet has traveled as I've added rows, and that's only going to keep going around as I go up. So I will come back when we're ready to start forming the thumb. I've completed the first 2.5 inches from the foundation row, and when I try on the mitten, that should be at the point where my thumb joins my hand here. That's the distance we're looking for. So you can adjust that according to the fit that you need. For the next row, the instructions say to single crochet for the first 38 stitches. So I've got my 38 stitches. I need to add 6 to make the inside part of the thumb. And you can do that with a chain stitch or a foundation single crochet. To do the foundation single crochet, go into the second leg of the single crochet that you just made, yarn over and pull through 2. Same thing again, go into the lower one, pick one up, go through 2. Going to do that for a total of 6. And there's my additional 6 foundation single crochets. Now I'm going to attach it to the mitten in the 26th stitch from the beginning. So you'll need to count off. I've marked the 26th one. So these 6 that I've just made, I'm going to attach with a single crochet to this 26th stitch here. Get that stitch marker out of the way. That becomes the first stitch of the thumb rounds. So I'll move that one up. Okay, so just double check that you've got 19, and you're going to continue round and round the thumb until it gets to the length that's marked on the pattern. When you get around to the stitches that you added on the inside of the thumb, just single crochet across those chain stitches or those foundation single crochets. It can be a little fiddly on the first round, but it will get much easier. Double check that you have the right number of stitches in the thumb, that you didn't lose one, and just continue round and round the thumb until it reaches the length called for in the pattern, which in my case is 2 inches, about a 1/4 inch less than the length of your thumb when you're wearing the mitten. So when I get to that point, I will show you what comes next. So there's my mitten with the thumb mostly completed. If this is your first time making a glove or a mitten and you've gotten this far, give yourself a pat on the back. You've figured out the hard parts. If it's your second mitten, it's a good idea to double check that they line up. So I've got 2 rows left to do on this thumb, so that's looking pretty good. To close off the top of the thumb, I need to single crochet some together. So for the next round, I'm going to single crochet 1, which is my starting single crochet of the row. Move up the marker. It's kind of a nuisance to move these markers every time, but it does really help you to keep your place and saves pulling out and doing it over to make sure you've got it right. Okay, then single crochet 2 together by going under the stitch, picking one up as for a single crochet, and then doing that again with the next stitch, going into the stitch, picking one up. So you've got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through. So that's a single crochet 2 together. We've made 1 stitch out of 2. Single crochet 1 and then 2 together, and continue that all the way around. 1 and then 2 together. For the small and medium size, after your last 2 together, you'll have 1 left. So we'll do 1 more single crochet. And on the last round, we're going to single crochet 2 together all the way around. And that will be a total of 7 stitches. So I'm going to take my marker out at this point and just count. 1, 3, 6 single crochet 2 together, and because I started with 13 I have 1 left, and I'll just single crochet in that one, yarn over, pull the thread through, and cut. Okay, I'm just going to find a yarn and needle. And what I'm going to do is just weave in and out of these last 7 stitches. And pull tight to close up the top of the thumb. Like so. I'm just going to put that thread to the inside right now, and I will weave it through later. So there you go, thumb all done. The next step is to pick up at the palm of the hand here and work around until we get up to where the finger joins on. So I'm going to attach my yarn to this first stitch at the base of the thumb. You can see that I still have my stitch marker for my starting stitch of the round. So I'll make a loop, put that on my hook, and I'm going to single crochet into the first stitch at the base of the thumb. Not this one, because that's the last stitch that we used on the thumb. We want this one. So with the loop on my hook, I'm going to go into that stitch and make a single crochet, like so. I don't like working off tails later if I don't need to, so I'm going to work over top of the tail to fill it in. The other option is to leave it loose, and then later on, if you have a little bit of a hole here at the base of the thumb, you can use that to close it up. Actually, maybe I'll do that. I'll leave it loose for now. So now I'm going to single crochet across to my starting point, which should be 18 stitches. So that's 2, 'So I single crocheted those 18 stitches to get me to my starting marker, and another 25 to get me to the base of the thumb. Now, if you will remember, we added 6 stitches around the inside of the thumb, so I need to pick up 6. So just kind of plan out where to put your hook to pick up the other side of those single crochets or foundation single crochets that you made there to get 6 going across. go into the base of that stitch and single crochet. That's 5. And so I need one more. It's a bit of a jump back to my stitch over here. So one strategy that I'll use sometimes to make sure there's not a gap is to single crochet 2 together at the corner of the thumb like this. So pick up one, pick up another one over here, and go back through those 3. And then I can always use that tail to tighten it up a bit more later on. Okay, so we're going to continue in the round at this point, starting with this first stitch that I picked up, moving the stitch marker up each time to keep track of the first stitch, and continuing even on these stitches. For a medium, I should have 49. So when I get back to my starting crochet, or my starting single crochet, I'm going to count and make sure that I've got 49, so I'm not having to go back later on because I've somehow added or dropped one. So I'll count up to make sure I've got the correct number, and then just continue even on these stitches to go up the hand to the measurement indicated on the pattern. So in my case, I'll have to do 4.5 inches here to get up to the finger, and you're measuring again from the foundation row. Okay? Or until you get to this point on your hand. You can customize that again. I will come back when we're ready to start the finger, and in the meantime I'll just continue around on these 49 stitches. So I've reached the point where I'm ready to start the finger. It meets the right measurement, and it just reaches up to my finger when I try it on. And the third way I'm going to check is to compare with the first mitten that I did and make sure I have a similar number of rows between the thumb cast on and where I'm starting the finger. And it all looks good. So if you're following along on the pattern and making your own mitten, I hope you're happy with what you've got so far. I really like this pattern. I think it's a lot of fun to make. And it makes a great gift for Christmas or any time. So for the next part, I'm going to single crochet 38 until I get to where the finger will start. And then I'm going to add on 2 stitches, or 4 for a large, to make the inside of the finger. So there I'm at 38. I've gone most of the way around to start the finger. And I'm going to add my 2 stitches to make the inside of the finger. And again, I'm going to do a foundation single crochet by going into the second leg of this stitch, picking one up, go through 2, go through the second loop away from my hook again, pick one up, and go through 2. So I've made 2 foundation single crochets there, and I'm going to go around and join it to the 22nd stitch from the beginning. So I'm going to go back and count, mark my 22nd stitch, and join in at that point. So I've marked the 22nd stitch in the round. I'm going to single crochet into that stitch and move the marker up to mark the first stitch in the finger rounds. And then I'm going to continue just like I did for the thumb, making sure that I have the right number of stitches for the finger, which for the medium is 19, and going round and round until I get to the correct length for the finger as indicated on the pattern, or just about 1/4 of an inch shorter than my index finger when I'm wearing the mitten. If you're following along and making your own mitten, I'd really appreciate some feedback in the comments. This is a pretty new channel, and I'm very open to some constructive comments on what you'd like to see, or how I'm doing things well or maybe not so well. Anything to help me improve the videos that I'm making so that you can become a more successful crocheter. So if you have a moment to drop a comment and let me know what you like and what you'd like to see, I really appreciate your time. With the finger finished, I'm ready to go on to the last section of the mitten, which is the top part here, where the other 3 fingers will go in the mitten. And just like at the base of the thumb, I'm going to join my first stitch into this palm side stitch next to the finger and work around, picking up the 2 stitches at the base of the finger that I added and going round and round on those 34 stitches until it reaches the measurement indicated on the pattern. So for a medium, that's 6 1/4 inches from the foundation row, or until the tip of your pinky finger is covered with the mitten when you're wearing it. At this point, you can take the stitch marker out because we're going to move it for the shaping at the top of the mitten. So I've worked my mitten until it reaches the top of my pinky finger, and now I'm going to create the shaping at the top of the outside fingers here. And we need to move our stitch marker for this by laying the mitten flat on the counter. Now keep in mind that the thumb tucks under a little bit with the way that it's shaped, because your thumb is oriented to the inside of your hand a little bit. So if you're not sure what I mean by laying it flat, just put the mitten on your hand like this so that it's laid flat on the table, and then just grab it and slide your hand out. So you'll see the thumb tucks under just a little bit. That's what I mean by laying it flat. And I need to put the stitch marker on the stitch that's closest to the finger. So this inside part here, you'll just have to pick if there's 2 of them that are kind of together there. That's going to become the new inside stitch, or the new starting stitch rather. Okay. So the beginning of my row is back here at this starting stitch that I just marked. And I'm going to follow the instructions on the pattern where it says top for shaping the top of the mitten. So I'm going to single crochet 15, starting back at that starting stitch. So 2, 4, 6, 8, I've got 9 so far. 14 and 15. And now I'm going to do some decreases for the top of the mitten. And to do that, I'm going to single crochet 2 together, single crochet 1, and then 2 together again. And just like before, the single crochet 2 together, pick up a stitch in the first single crochet, or a loop, pick up a loop in the second single crochet, pick up a loop and go through all 3. That's a single crochet 2 together to decrease from 2 stitches to 1. Now just a plain single crochet and then another decrease, a single crochet 2 together. Then I'll work back to my stitch marker, move it up to the next row, and on the next row I'll do the same thing, but my starting number will decrease each time. So instead of 15 before the decreases, I'll have 14, and the next row will be 13, and so on, until I get down to 24 stitches overall. At that point, I will begin shaping on both sides. So I'll come back at that point and show you how that works. So I'm down to 24 stitches, and I'm going to start shaping on both sides to finish off the top of the mitten. So for the next round, I'm going to single crochet in the first one and move my stitch marker up. And then to shape on this side, I'll do a decrease right after that. So single crochet 2 together, single crochet 7, decrease on the other side in the same manner, single crochet 2 together, single crochet 1, single crochet 2 together. Down the other side of the mitten, I'll do another 7 single crochets. And then the last 2 I'll put together, single crochet 2 together. The next round I'll continue in the same manner, single crochet the first stitch, then put 2 together, single crochet 5, because now we're going down 2 on each side, and then decrease on this side, 2 together, 1, single crochet 2 together, 5 on the back, single crochet 2 together for the last 2. The next row it'll be 3 in between, and the row after that it will be 1 in between, and then I'll be down to 8 stitches and finished the top of the mitten. So I closed up the top of the mitten once I got to 8 stitches, and there you have it, my trigger mittens all done. I hope that you enjoyed this project and that you'll give it a try yourself. Let me know what you think in the comments. and like and subscribe. I would really appreciate your support. We'll see you in the next video.